It was a chilly morning just outside a quiet little town, the kind of place where the fog still hugs the ground and the world feels like it's holding its breath. A soft breeze rustled the tall grass by the edge of an abandoned field, and everything was still, almost too still. No one noticed the desperate cries carried by the wind. They were faint, weak, and growing quieter with every passing second. But someone did hear them. A baby, barely old enough to say full sentences, heard something no one else did. And what that baby did next would leave an entire town, and eventually the whole world, in tears. The day had started like any other for Claire and her 1-year-old son Noah. They had just moved into a modest farmhouse on the outskirts of town. Claire had dreams of raising her boy somewhere peaceful, away from the chaos of city life. The house was old, the kind that creaked in the night and smelled faintly of lavender and dust, but it had charm. It had land. And most importantly, it had hope for new beginnings. Claire was in the kitchen, humming softly to the radio while preparing breakfast. She turned for just a moment to grab a cloth, and when she looked back, Noah was gone. The back door was wide open. Her heart dropped. Panic surged through her as she raced outside, calling his name over and over. "Noah! Baby, where are you?" There was no answer. Just wind and the far-off sound of a crow. She ran toward the open field behind the house, feet pounding against the earth. Her eyes scanned everywhere, heart hammering in her chest. Then she saw him. There he was, standing a few feet from the old barbed wire fence that marked the edge of their property. He wasn't crying. He wasn't even moving. He just stood there, staring at something tangled in the fence. Claire rushed to him, scooping him up and clutching him tightly to her chest. "Noah, don't ever run off like that again, you scared me so bad." But then she saw it too. A German shepherd. Motionless, her fur matted with dirt and blood. Her body was caught in the barbed wire. Her hind legs twisted and suspended in an unnatural way. Claire's breath caught in her throat. She could see the animal's sides rising and falling rapidly. She was alive. Barely. Claire froze. This wasn't just a dog, it was a pregnant dog. It was hard to tell how long she had been there. Long enough for the vines to begin to grow around the lower parts of the fence. Long enough for her eyes to look dull with exhaustion and pain. But not long enough to take her will to survive. And yet, through all the pain, there was something else. Sound. A whimper. Claire listened closer, then realized it wasn't coming from the dog. It was coming from below. At her feet, curled beneath the barbed wire, was a tiny bundle of fur. A newborn pup. Eyes closed, body trembling but alive. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. Somehow, against all odds, this mother had already given birth to one puppy. And the puppy had somehow made it through the fence. Noah, still in her arms, reached his little hand out toward the pup and made a soft noise, like he understood. Like he was trying to say, "Help her." Claire didn't have time to think. She ran back to the house with Noah and the newborn pup, wrapped it in an old towel, and called the only vet she knew in town, Dr. Ramirez, an older woman who had long since retired but still kept a soft spot for rescue cases. By the time Dr. Ramirez arrived, the mother dog was slipping fast. Claire couldn't get too close. Any attempt to untangle her only made things worse. The barbs had sliced into her skin in ways that made Claire's stomach turn. But Dr. Ramirez didn't flinch. She moved with steady hands, and within 20 minutes, the mother dog was freed, gently placed on a stretcher, and loaded into the back of the vet's van. Claire rode with her, holding the newborn pup close, while Noah stayed behind with a neighbor. The vet clinic was quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you hold your breath, not wanting to break the silence. Claire sat in the waiting room, hands shaking. Time felt strange, like it stretched and collapsed all at once. She couldn't stop thinking about what the dog had gone through. How had she ended up there? Who had left her like that? And then there was the bigger question. Was there more than one pup? That's when Dr. Ramirez came out. Her eyes were red, her face tight with emotion. She nodded slowly. "She's still with us," she whispered. "But barely. And yes, there are more." Claire stood, her heart pounding. How many? The vet hesitated. 4 more. Still inside. I'll have to try and save them. But she's too weak to deliver on her own. Claire didn't even realize she was crying until the tears hit her hands. She looked down at the tiny pup in the towel and whispered, "Hang in there, Mama." Back home something strange happened. Noah, normally full of energy, was unusually quiet. He sat by the front door, holding a toy in one hand, staring out across the field. Every now and then, he made the same soft sound he had made when he first saw the pup. Hours passed. Then came the call. But what Claire heard on the other end of that phone would change everything. It wasn't just about the dog. It wasn't just about the pups. What Dr. Ramirez discovered next, in the final moments of surgery, uncovered something no one was expecting. And it all started with the smallest, most fragile bark. One that didn't belong to any of the 5 pups they had counted. There was something else. And what happened next would leave everyone in that clinic, and soon the world, completely speechless. Because sometimes it's not the strongest that lead us to hope. Sometimes it's the tiniest voice that changes everything. Claire's hand trembled as she lowered the phone from her ear. Her heart felt like it had been thrown into a storm. She looked over at Noah, still sitting by the door, watching the wind sway the tall grass outside. He didn't speak, but it was like he knew. Somehow he just knew something more was happening. The call from Dr. Ramirez was short, her voice careful. "Claire, I found something," she'd said. "It's not just 5 puppies. There was another. But not like the others." Claire didn't understand what that meant, but the way the vet had spoken, like she was still trying to wrap her mind around it, made her skin crawl. She grabbed her keys, bundled Noah into his jacket, and drove straight to the clinic. The wind picked up as she drove, the sky growing heavy with clouds, though no rain had been forecast. Everything felt off, like the world was holding a breath it wasn't ready to release. When they arrived, the clinic was dim, most of the lights off. Dr. Ramirez met them at the door. She didn't smile. Her eyes were tired and her hands were stained with the kind of long, tense work that left invisible marks on the soul. "She's still resting," she said quietly. "The mother. I've never seen anything like her. I don't know how she made it this far. She must have been out there for days. Maybe longer. No food. No water. Still tried to protect her babies." Claire looked toward the back room. "You said there was another pup?" Dr. Ramirez nodded slowly. "Yes. But not just another puppy." Claire frowned. "What do you mean?" The vet led them inside. The room smelled like antiseptic and warmth, like healing and heartbreak. The mother German shepherd lay on a thick bed of blankets, 4 tubes attached to her paw. Her breathing was shallow but steady. And beside her, nestled in a box lined with towels, were 5 tiny pups, wiggling, blinking, making little squeaky noises that tugged at the heart. And then, at the edge of the box, was the 6th. This one wasn't like the others. It was smaller, thinner, barely bigger than the palm of a hand. Its fur was a strange mixture of pale gray and white, and its eyes, though barely open, shimmered with a blue that looked almost glassy. It didn't cry or move much. Just lay there, quiet, as though listening to something no one else could hear. Dr. Ramirez knelt beside the box. This one was lodged in her rib cage. "I had to perform an emergency procedure to get him out. The fact that he's alive is unbelievable. But there's something else." Claire stared at the pup. "What?" "He's deaf," the vet said softly. "And possibly blind. I ran a few quick checks. His heart is strong, but he doesn't respond to sound. And he's not following light. I don't know if it's permanent or just the trauma, but he's different." Claire felt something tighten in her chest. She didn't know why, but she knelt down and slowly reached her hand toward the tiny pup. Her fingers brushed his soft fur, and then suddenly he moved. Not much, just a shift, a little press into her palm like he recognized her. Dr. Ramirez's eyes widened. "That's the first time he's moved like that since I pulled him out." Noah, who had been quietly holding her hand the whole time, suddenly reached forward. He touched the pup gently, just one little finger on the pup's head, and the puppy gave the softest sound like a sigh. Claire looked at Dr. Ramirez. "What does it mean?" "I don't know," she said, voice trembling. "But this isn't just about a rescue anymore. There's something else at play here. This dog wasn't dumped. She was hidden." Claire stared at her. "Hidden?" The vet nodded. "You said you found her tangled in barbed wire. That area has been abandoned for years. No one goes there. And the way she was caught, it wasn't by accident. Someone tied part of the wire around her back leg. It was deliberate." Claire's stomach turned. Who would do something like that to a pregnant dog? "I don't know. But whoever didn't want her to be found." Noah made a quiet sound, tugging at Claire's sleeve. He pointed at the sixth pup, his face unusually serious for a child so small. "He's listening," he whispered. Claire looked down. "But he can't hear, sweetie." Noah shook his head. "Not with ears." Dr. Ramirez glanced at Claire, eyebrows raised. That night Claire couldn't sleep. She brought the sixth pup home with her, along with the first one they'd found, now named Lucky. The others stayed with their mom under Dr. Ramirez's care. Claire made a little bed in a basket next to Noah's crib, checking on them every hour. She couldn't stop thinking about what the vet had said, about the wire, the location, the fact that it wasn't an accident. And then there was the pup, the strange, silent one who had survived against all odds, who had connected with her and Noah in ways that didn't make sense. Around midnight, she was jolted awake by the sound of Noah crying. She rushed to his room, only to find him sitting up, staring at the window. "What is it, baby?" He pointed. "Dog." Claire moved to the window. Nothing was there. Just shadows. "You had a dream," she whispered, tucking him back into bed. But as she turned away, she caught something. A reflection. In the window pane. A figure far off by the edge of the field. Standing. Watching. She blinked and it was gone. The next morning, Claire returned to the clinic. Dr. Ramirez was already up, standing outside with a frown on her face. "Something strange happened last night," the vet said. "The power went out at exactly 2:17 a.m. Only in this building. Nothing else in town. The security footage shows static for exactly 2 minutes. And then comes back. But when it does..." She held out her phone, showing a grainy image from the camera feed. The mother dog was asleep. The pups were huddled together. But at the edge of the frame, just barely visible, was the outline of a person. Not clear, not detailed, but someone was there. Claire's blood went cold. "That's the same time I saw someone outside my house." Dr. Ramirez nodded. "I don't know what's going on, Claire. But this isn't just about saving some puppies. Someone didn't want them found. And now that they are." Claire looked down at the little pup in her arms, still quiet, still fragile, but somehow calm. Like he knew something. Something none of them did. And whatever it was, it wasn't over yet. Claire couldn't get the symbol out of her mind. It had been scratched into the barn wall with purpose. Clean, sharp, fresh. Not the work of a random vandal. It was a message. One she couldn't understand, but her son somehow did. That was the part that truly scared her. Noah, barely 5, had looked at it with no confusion in his eyes. Just a quiet certainty. "They're coming," he had said. But who was they? And why did that strange little puppy whisper seem to be the center of it all? Every instinct in Claire told her she needed to get help. But from who? The authorities wouldn't take a mysterious dog breeding facility and a silent pup seriously. Dr. Ramirez was already doing everything she could. And Noah? Well, Noah was slipping further into a silence of his own. He wasn't scared, at least not in the usual way. He just kept saying things that made Claire feel like he knew more than he could explain. He'd say things like, "Whisper says the bad man is looking again," or "The dog remembers the dark place." One night, Claire sat by the fire, Whisper curled in her lap, Lucky at her feet. The rest of the pups were still with their mom at the clinic, but Whisper had bonded with her and Noah in a way that couldn't be undone. The storm outside cracked against the windows, and Claire felt the tension in the house build with every gust of wind. Whisper stirred, his head lifting slowly. He wasn't reacting to the sound. He never did. It was something else. Claire stood, holding him gently, and looked toward the front of the house. There was no knock this time. Just silence. But when she peeked through the curtain, she saw something parked just down the road. Black van. No markings. No headlights. Just sitting there. She stepped back and locked the door. Her heart thudded in her ears. She tried to call Dr. Ramirez, but the call didn't go through. No signal. Her internet had been out for 2 days already. Every backup plan was falling apart. Then, around midnight, Noah came downstairs in his pajamas, holding his flashlight. "They're here," he said simply. Claire's knees weakened. "Noah, what do you mean?" He pointed to the window. "Not outside. In the barn." Claire's blood ran cold. She grabbed the flashlight and gently set Whisper in his carrier. "Stay inside," she whispered, kneeling to Noah's level. "Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone but me." He didn't argue, just nodded once. Claire stepped out into the storm, flashlight trembling in her hand. The barn stood only a few yards away, but the walk felt like miles. Every crunch of gravel beneath her boots felt louder than the wind. She reached the barn door and paused. Inside something shifted. A faint sound, barely a breath, but there. She pushed the door open slowly. The light flickered across the inside of the barn, catching old hay, tools, and the crate she used for storage. Then, just beyond the edge of the beam, she saw movement. Man. He stepped into the light, wearing a long coat soaked through by the storm. His face was partly hidden beneath a hood, but Claire could see a scar running down the left side of his jaw. He didn't flinch, didn't speak. Just stared at her. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice stronger than she felt. "I came for the dog," he said flatly. Claire gripped the flashlight tighter. "He's not yours. He was never yours either. He was designed, created. He's not what you think." Claire didn't back down. "He's a puppy. He's a life." The man's eyes narrowed. "He's a key. That facility wasn't shut down. It just went underground. The 6th pup was never meant to be born. But he was. And now they're all looking for him. You have no idea what you're protecting." Claire's chest tightened. "Who's they?" The man took one step forward. "The people who built the program. Whisper wasn't bred to be a companion. He's sensitive to emotional frequencies. He was the first successful subject to show signs of responding to them without any verbal commands. Fear, grief, guilt, he can feel them. They were going to train him to track trauma. Use him for psychological profiling." Claire's breath caught. "He's just a baby. And that's why they want him back. Before he bonds too deep. Before he forgets what he was trained for." She backed away slowly, heart pounding. "He doesn't belong to you. He belongs with us now." The man didn't respond. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small. A click, and then the lights in the barn shut off. The darkness swallowed everything. Claire ran. She didn't look back. She sprinted toward the house, slipped on the wet gravel, caught herself and kept moving. Behind her, she could hear him. His boots thudding against the ground, gaining. She made it to the porch, flung open the door, and slammed it shut just as the man reached it. She locked it, backed away, breath catching in her throat. Noah stood in the hallway, holding Whisper tightly in his arms. His eyes wide but calm. "I told you," he whispered. "He remembers." Claire knelt beside him, pulling him close. "We have to hide." They hurried to the basement, the only place in the house with no windows. Claire locked the door behind them and huddled against the wall, Whisper between them. Upstairs she could hear footsteps. Not one pair. Multiple. Heavy boots. Careful movements. They weren't trying to scare her. They were searching. Noah leaned close to Whisper's ear, even though the pup couldn't hear him. "Don't let them find you," he whispered. "You're not like them anymore." Whisper stirred. Then, for the first time, he lifted his tiny head and made a low, almost inaudible hum, a sound Claire had never heard before. Then everything went silent upstairs. The footsteps stopped. The tension in the air grew thick, like it was pressing down on their lungs. Claire held her breath, heart racing. And then the basement door creaked. Whoever was on the other side was not here to ask questions. They had come to finish what someone else started. And the truth about Whisper, and the people who wanted him, was about to crash into their lives like a storm that had been building for years. But Claire wasn't ready to let go. Not of Whisper. Not of Noah. Not of the fight. Not yet. The silence in the woods was almost supernatural. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Whisper stood in Noah's arms like he had grown heavier, more grounded, like the small, trembling puppy was gone, and something else had taken its place. Claire couldn't take her eyes off him. Mason stepped back, staring like he'd seen a ghost. Dr. Ramirez didn't move. Neither did the figures beneath the trees. And then, Whisper looked at them. Not with fear. Not with confusion. With understanding. It happened in a blink. A pulse of something invisible. No sound, no flash. But everyone felt it. Claire gasped. Her vision blurred, like a wave had passed through her chest. Mason stumbled, clutching his head. Dr. Ramirez dropped to one knee, tears springing to her eyes. The men in the woods, silent, rigid, suddenly staggered backward. One fell to the ground. Another gripped a tree like he couldn't breathe. It wasn't pain Whisper gave them. It was memory. Abandonment. Every emotion they had buried, every command they'd followed without question, it all came crashing back. In their minds they were no longer officers or scientists or trackers. They were children again. Afraid. Alone. Wanting to be seen. Whisper didn't attack. He made them feel. Claire held Noah tighter as the moment stretched out like forever. Then slowly the air lifted. The pressure faded. Whisper blinked and nuzzled into Noah's chest. Exhausted but peaceful. Around them the world seemed to restart. Leaves rustled. Rain tapped gently on the earth again. In the distance, the engines of the vans roared to life. The men, whatever they'd felt, had decided to leave. All of them. Without a word. Dr. Ramirez stood up, eyes wet, voice shaking. He didn't just stop them. He changed them. Claire looked down at the pup in her son's arms. Whisper was quiet now, barely moving. "Is he okay?" she asked. Noah nodded. "He's just tired." Mason sat on the porch steps, staring into space. "That wasn't supposed to be possible," he muttered. "The program never worked like that. Emotional mirroring was only theoretical." "You didn't give him a choice before," Claire said softly. "You never gave any of them a chance to just be loved." Mason didn't argue. He looked smaller somehow, like the truth had worn down every excuse he'd been holding onto. "You're right." Dr. Ramirez walked over, setting a hand on Claire's shoulder. "It's over. He's safe now. You're safe." Claire didn't know how to respond. Her whole life had turned upside down in the span of days. She hadn't asked for any of this. But somehow it had chosen her, and Noah. And now, this tiny pup who'd been left behind like trash, had turned out to be something extraordinary. They all walked back inside, moving slowly. Whisper was curled in Noah's arms, his breathing soft and steady. Mason remained outside, staring at the trees. Maybe he would leave. Maybe he wouldn't. But he knew now that what he had taken from those dogs wasn't just data. It was trust. Inside, Claire settled Noah into bed. He didn't say much, just hugged Whisper close and closed his eyes. For the first time in days, he looked truly at peace. Later that night, when the house was still, Claire went to the kitchen for tea. As she poured the water, she noticed Whisper sitting by the door, staring out into the dark. She walked over quietly and sat beside him. "What is it?" she whispered. The pup turned his head toward her and blinked slowly. Then came the twist Claire hadn't expected. Noah's voice drifted from the hallway behind her, soft but clear. He says his name isn't Whisper. Claire turned around, confused. What do you mean? Noah stood there in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. That's what we called him. But it's not his name. He told me just now. He remembered. Claire swallowed. Then what is it? Noah smiled faintly, sleepy but sure. His name is Echo. Claire blinked. Echo. Because he doesn't just hear us. He reflects us, Noah said. He shows us who we are. And what we've forgotten. Claire looked back at the small pup, now curled again at the door. Go. It made sense in a way that hit deep. Whisper had always been too quiet for what he truly was. He wasn't a secret to hide. He was a reminder. A reflection of pain, of healing, of second chances. And maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't ready for him yet. But in this house with this family, Echo was finally home.